And we're back with me, Johnny McMurray, on the On The Spot Football Podcast for yet another fantastic guest. Our next guest is a very successful entrepreneur and ex-manager, and he was one of the first people that let a very chubby 18-year-old run around a pitch and try and score goals. It's my pleasure to introduce Barry Gray. Barry?
Johnny, how's things?
I'm very good, sir. How are you?
I'm good.
We've had a very strange morning in the studio compared to probably what I'm used to, never mind what you've walked into, but it's been different.
No comment.
No comment. Well, I'm going to make a comment. There was a cage fighter, an MMA fighter, bare knuckle fighter. What's her name again? Raquel Phoenix, I think. Phoenix Fitness. She wasn't swinging digs now, but I mean, it was there. She's exciting. But very different.
Very different, yeah. As I say, it's good for me to sit in the side room, keep my distance.
Stay away from it. Oh, God love her. Good luck there anyway. I mean, she did score out me at one stage as a joke, thinking I was joking, but I was very much so right beside you in that studio.
No difference in your normal on the pitch when you play.
But see that you're protected. Yeah. There's lanes, there's referees. No one's going to do anything in the pitch. It's all handbags. You've said this for years, do you know? Yeah. And I was always the guy at the front and then waiting my way to the back and pointing over. So, mate, thank you very much for coming on. It's an absolute pleasure taking time out of your day. But how's things? It's good to see you.
Oh, it's good, yeah. Can't complain too much.
Nah, come on.
Not yet.
We'll
ease our way into it.
We will. You've recently just told me that you've semi sort of retired. People are semi-retiring me, by the way. So you're semi-retired. You're dipping in and out, but you're not taking the full responsibility of things.
No, yeah, just a rebalance of life and joy. People keep telling me it's because I was sick last year and I've that midlife crisis and sickness and all the rest. It's not. It's just a wee bit of rebalance. Maybe just the realisation of doing too much for too long. So if you have the opportunity and you can get it, to relax a wee bit more. Not. I'm definitely not bored any day, put it that way. But as I have a lot, it's a different pace than what I'm used to.
It's good to have you in, man, and it's good to see you. You're happy, you're smiling. That's the Barry Gray we all like. For the one that I was used to screaming at me on the sideline, you know.
You deserved it.
I did. Probably did
deserve
it. You're right. Well, listen, what I want to do, and the gist of the podcast is, it's kind of all about you, and it's, as much as I know that you probably don't want to speak about you per se, we'll delve into a few different subjects. But how did it get started? Because we've had many a conversation around coaching and playing badges and managing and X, Y and Z, but how did it all come around for you?
Football started, management, coaching started for me at a local club, a community centre based club for me when I was probably 16, 17, 18 at the time, wee club called Midway, and very community based. It wasn't in any serious level at all, and had a friend of mine take a wee team at the time. There was a senior team that played in the local Caribbean League, and we just played a wee bit for them on the Saturdays, and we coached a wee team on the Saturday morning, training and stuff like that. And that's generally nothing too serious, just very much a bit of crack, and just we in that community circle, it was a case of you didn't have to know a whole lot. You just need to know a wee bit more than the man that was before you, you know. So that's no disrespect to anybody. I knew nothing and other people knew nothing, but you were there for the kids just in the local area, to try and give them a bit of direction in football and try to make it as fun and energetic as we could. And that's where it began. It was very community oriented at that time through the community centre. I was involved in the community centre myself and done a wee bit on the community end of things, and football was just a fraction of that, really.
In terms of that though, was it something that you thought was going to materialise into you ever taking it any further, or becoming a manager or doing coaching badges?
No, not at all. It was never an aspiration of mine. As I say, you played a wee bit. The wee team that I had at the time were under 16s, 17s, 18s, and then we got the opportunity. The club didn't go any further in the age group at that time, so we had the opportunity to take the under 18 age group down to Newry reserves, the whole team and us as a management team with them. And even at that stage, it was very much just should we go? We went with the wee team because we didn't want to break them up, and there was never anything personally
Yeah.
motivated through it. So it was nice. You didn't have to think about yourself. It just was what it was. And from there, then he got not a move. I went to Warrenpoint after that as a favour to one of the club guys that I would have known through Mickey Gray, through youth football throughout the years. No relations or anything like that. It was very much just a case where we knew each other and respected each other through youth football. And I actually went to talk to him about the senior team at the time at Warrenpoint, nearly as a favour for a year.
Right, okay.
Believe it or not. Not per se a favour, but we'll give it a go for a wee while, but it's never going to go anywhere. It's never going to last. In them days, I was a Newry man going into Warrenpoint, and that was just...
This is something that kind of took me by surprise. I was going to say, I never thought Barry Gray was originally a Newry man compared to a Warrenpoint man. I thought that was Warrenpoint through and through.
No, well, nobody knows me prior to Warrenpoint days. That's maybe a good thing, but no, you're a Newry man. As I say, in them days, anybody, players, managers, anyone, any involvement in Warrenpoint as a club was Warrenpoint and local. Certainly wouldn't have been anything outside that. So I was probably one of the first to break the mould, in around that time. Certainly in the senior team, it was unknown for an outsider to come in and manage. So,
what made you want to take that step though? Was it like just personal, like achievement? Was a thing going, I'd have a crack at this, see what happens, and try and go forward? Or was it like, I actually feel like they might be able to move up? It may take a long time. There's a long-term plan with it, or
no, there wasn't. People like to look back on now what's been done and say there was a plan for you going in. As I said earlier, like my notion probably of why I went in was to help Mickey and the senior team for a year. It was never going to be anything more than that. I didn't know what I was going into. Didn't know any of the players. Didn't know the club. Didn't know.
And was it as a manager?
Yeah.
And what age were you?
I was probably about, I'd say, early 20s.
Okay.
Maybe.
Strange situation to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, but I had been coaching with the kids and whatever for years at that beforehand. And as I say, I had stopped playing. I wasn't playing anymore at that stage. So, but there were days where everything was easier. When you're at that age, you don't see any boundaries. There's no issues. You just give it a go. You don't worry about winning or losing or failing. There's nothing you can't do. And that was probably very much the attitude that I had at that stage. Sure, you've nothing to lose. Give it a go. And sure, if it doesn't work out, it's nothing lost.
Would you think, looking back on it was more of an enjoyable time to be managing because you were able to experiment, do different things, and as you say, you didn't really have to worry about a result?
No, you didn't. I mean, Mid-Ulster football at that stage compared to Premiership of later on, two very, very different levels. But football at that I don't know if football at that level is the same as what it was for me then. But for me then, it was my job to come in and do better, to try and add a wee bit more professionalism, to add a wee bit more structure of what I thought as a 20-odd-year-old, if you hadn't a clue what you were doing. Looking back now, I probably didn't look like that at the time. I probably had the answers for everything, 'cause you know me.
You still do, let's be honest.
None of the answers
That's
right,
not bad,
but I have an answer, just none of them are right. But yeah, it was listen, it was a local team. All you had to do was harness a local team, bring a few new players in, and go with the flow of it. They were a decent team anyway.
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily need me to be. The journey after that was what it was.
Yeah.
But them days were different. Them days, I was at an age where some of the players were older than me.
Well, this is what I was, probably the next question was, how do you go into that, or how does that feel for you to be that young and you're going in and trying to stamp an authority on a team where you're an outsider, you're a Newry man, they're probably already looking at you as, no one cares if Barry Gray's coming in. It must be different.
Yeah, but you had that wee bit of fear about you. As you know, you have very, it comes off me whether I like it or not. Because you're brash enough to make decisions, whether they be right or wrong. But when you're in your 20s and you're socialising with the players that you're managing. And in them days, you did. Like, we would have finished the game on a Saturday, you went to the pub, and your players, your whole squad of players would have been in the pub. Maybe not necessarily with me, but they've been in the same pub, and you'd have been drinking pints and doing whatever you'd done in them days, just socially. And that was totally normal.
Do you think that worked?
We got a lot out of that at that stage.
Yeah.
All the textbooks will tell you, geez, don't do that.
Yeah.
You're mad, you can't do this and you can't do it socially. But if I was 22 or 23, the player that was playing centre half or centre forward for me was 22.
Yeah.
You know, so there was nothing wrong with it from a social aspect. You were on the same platform, the same stage.
You're not a 50-year-old man trying to incorporate a lifestyle of drinking with 22-year-olds.
Yeah. If I went now to the room full of 20, 22-year-olds, you would get some looks. Now, in fairness, I could probably still drink the best with them and socialise the best with them. I don't know if they'd be as happy as I would be, but it would probably be frowned upon now in football to do that sort of thing. Again, I don't know what, lower levels of football. I assume it's still very socially led, at that level, or I'd expect it. There's nothing wrong with that.
I don't think so. I think that I wouldn't say trying to replicate it at a higher level is probably the most ideal thing to do, but certainly think that those team sessions that come with it and the bonding and the rapport that you build is very much needed in terms of getting you potentially to gel or be together, and it's probably taken over too much now, I think.
Yeah, I think there's maybe learning aspects of both, because when you're at senior level, a lot of players, managers, coaches, whatever, may never have tasted that level and that sort of bond that you have that comes with that. And it does have to be ultra serious in lots of aspects at top level, but I would always have a question for me whether there isn't a wee bit of both in there, or whether you can't have a wee bit of both, because I think it's unmeasurable just what you can, the output of what you get with a team. You hear people talk about leaders and lack of them and all this sort of craze for years now, and you say that togetherness. We live in such a fast-paced world now where nobody takes time to think about anyone else around them. It's just all about me, plough on the way you should, and that's what senior football is now. Where if you look at that, you're playing next to a player on the pitch that maybe isn't as good as you, and I'm going to have to do a wee bit more here, or else we're going to be hammered. With the old days of somebody hits a bad tackle, like in them days you would have an 11v11 standoff. Now somebody hits a bad tackle,
nobody wants to.
You'd be looking around. If you were looking for a fight on a pitch or a training pitch now, you'd be on your own.
Yeah.
And that's just where we are as a society, where I think my days, the early days of Warrenpoint, was that togetherness and tightness was really, really tight. And that brought its own downsides as well, but it was a good group. It was an enjoyable time for me as a young manager who really hadn't a clue what he was doing at that stage.
Well, it does escalate. Obviously, it forms over, if anybody knows Warrenpoint and knows Barry Grace, that's the sort of success that came with it. It's Mid-Ulster League right through with a very core group of young players who half of them are all related. There's multiple people in there, but there's a good core that end up staying right through till they got to the Premiership, which is probably unheard of, because you're taking a group of people that are probably in today's day and age are suited to that level, and that's probably why they're there. You were able to get the best out of this group and kind of bring the majority of that team right up to the Premiership. Yeah,
I don't think anyone that was in that group for us would ever look back and say, if I said now, we probably on an individual level, player for player, how many Premiership players did we actually have?
Not many.
Not a lot. And I don't think any of the players would dispute that, even on an individual basis about themselves, never mind their teammates. And it probably goes to show the power of that group mentality, because that's what got it. That's, I don't know, many years we were at Premiership and at Warrenpoint, but 7-8 years out of 10. And people will say, yeah, but you're always fighting relegation. Yeah, but you still, you kept such a small regional club and team at top level of football for the guts of 10 years with no recognised players, no recognised experience, management or playing staff, no budget, no money, no fans, your little fans, little resource, all the rest. You know, when you look at nowadays, and everyone tells me about how football has changed and how the money's come in, it's made it all different. And I'm saying the teams now that don't have your big millionaire, billionaire backers, they're today's modern day Warrenpoint.
Yeah.
But everybody's too busy feeling sorry for themselves because they don't have that backer.
Yeah.
As opposed to
everybody's looking at it now, aren't they?
doing what we had to do in Warrenpoint in them years, because you had no choice.
Yeah.
You just had to find ways to be, you know, hard and better and nuka to get a wee edge or a wee bit. And them wee bits were only tiny wee bits, but they made a difference for us.
Yeah. In terms of you being at that level, you obviously bring in many a player, myself included, and a couple of others, but sort of like a detriment to your own success in a way, because every season you had to continuously replace players who didn't want to obviously maybe be fighting in that relegation zone, offered more money at a bigger club, or had to move on because they starred in a team like that. How continuously hard is it to constantly know that every year you're pretty much doing a rebuild?
It was difficult because we had such a big group of local players, and then because we fired up through the ranks so quickly, obviously you're going to have a natural drop off because the level dictates that. Then you have an age over 3 or 4 years as players age that maybe aren't Premiership players. That's going to be a bigger challenge. And then you have the whole commitment thing. So somebody who starts off playing pub football and 3 years later is supposed to act like a Premiership player, and the commitment around that is huge compared to
they just don't want to change, maybe.
Like around the Saturday afternoon, that's what I signed up for 3 years ago, and now all of a sudden I have to be a professional player. So that's life and their own personal choices. So that initial period it wasn't a choice as a manager. Players fell off because that's the evolution of where we went so quickly. Then you're in Premiership and established for a few years. The attraction of players is difficult. You know yourself, like nobody wants to play in relegation battles. So as our local players dropped off, they weren't replaced with the same level of local player as quickly as what we needed. So that pushed your bands further and further out. We done a lot of business in the southern market because, you know, to get Belfast players to come to Warrenpoint,
it's too far.
Well, you might as well say come to Cork. You know,
an hour's drive is like
not
the last thing anybody in Belfast wants to be.
Where if you talk to
redoing.
A player that lives in and around Dublin, an hour's drive is like 5 minutes for us.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they can't get across Dublin as a city in an hour, never mind, you know.
Yeah.
So coming up the motorway, straight motorway, an hour up the road, it's no big deal for them. So we found it was an easier market for us. It was a better challenge for them players because it was a league that they were unaware of. Even if there was a relegation, they seen it as an opportunity to just get senior football under their belt. That was an easier sell than coming to northern players that were a wee bit more schooled in our league and knew what they would be signing in for. Now, over time, we changed that a wee bit. We were lucky enough to be able to get, you know, a more of a balance in terms of northern players back in the team again. But like you know yourself, when you were there, it was a split room. You had 50% that were from Dublin, 50% that were from Belfast, and practically no local players. And I'll say it now because everyone jumps on the bandwagon. Well, local team, local players, and all this, and you have to have. We think it's not that we chose not to have local players when they're not there and they're not capable, or they're not willing to commit to that level of football and that sacrifice. You can't have them.
Yeah.
And I used to say to people all the time, you know, Liverpool, how many local players play for Liverpool from Liverpool? You know, but people still support them and say, we have to do that if you want the best team, where we had to do it at Warrenpoint because we had no choice.
The only other side of it is they're getting success by paying millions. You're not getting success and you're not paying millions. No, so, no.
But the concept's still the same. You have to. People always thought, or not lots of people, but there's always them. You know, you've no local players, and then you say, when's the last time you were at a game?
Yeah.
You know, he's somebody maybe that comes to a game once a year, and it's probably to see us in a relegation playoff game.
Right, to
And
have
they're probably
something to
standing
say.
outside the fence hoping that he can get relegated, and it'll give them enough talk
Yeah.
the Saturday night to sit down in the pub and talk about you. But that's life. That's the way it goes. But yeah, the splitting players and the way it was difficult. And you knew, great, take you and you do well. And I'm thinking, I want you to do well, but just not
Too well.
Yeah, just don't do well when we need you to, but not so well because I know I'm going to have to go and look for another player
Yeah.
in the next window. And you know, every manager does it, me included. When you're not there, you look at the teams and around the bottom, there's always 1 or 2, 3 players that you would maybe take a chance on. You wait and see how the form is going, how they're disrupted, what they're not enjoying, and the next window comes and you have a go. Very difficult for us. I remember Cliftonville coming in at times when I was Warrenpoint manager to pick off Daniel Hughes and boys like that, and you throw your hands up and say,
You have to. At that stage, Daniel Hughes probably had to go. And we talked about this in the podcast, and I was actually with Jared Little 2 days ago doing a wee bit of filming for another TV show, and I had to, obviously, Jared was the reason why that obviously I ended up, as much as he probably wanted me, I said it in a way where he probably wanted me out at that stage, but a young, overweight 18-year-old who went to Thailand a couple of weeks before season started was never going to really work out for Jared, you know what I mean? Especially Cliftonville being at the level, but it does allow people like you who are willing, and I think it's harder in today's day and age for people to be managing the Premiership to take a chance on a sort of, at that stage, was very much so an overweight 18-year-old.
Yeah, you don't see it as much now as what we would have back in them days. Like, for me as Warrenpoint manager in them days, to take a player from Cliftonville that is anything has a level of respect straight away that Warrenpoint as a club just would never have had a player from Belfast, Cliftonville, Brand or whatever club. It just wouldn't happen. It's more common now, but I think players are more skilled now, so generally they all are at a certain fitness level. They all are, and
They all look after themselves now.
like
And
an 18-year-old now that's overweight doesn't play in Premiership.
no,
That is out of condition, doesn't play in. They might be out of match condition. Yes, that's fine because they lack game time, but they're very much rounded in terms of their physical fitness. And they'll look at a club. If I was managing Warrenpoint now and we're in the Premiership, they'll look at that club and say, I'm not going there.
yeah,
And you're saying, but you'll rather sit on Cliftonville's bench or in the stand, not even in the bench,
reserves.
or any other team, or play under 20s football to wear a Cliftonville tracksuit instead of coming to actually better your game time and get it on, even if it's just for 6 months and do
The
it.
experience
And
still
the
stand by you, 100%.
And it's a wee bit like we were talking about earlier, isn't it? A lot of the top Premiership players have never tasted that togetherness of a Mid-Ulster team or a lower level team, so they don't know any different. They just look at it and think, well, I wouldn't do that. There's no way I'm doing that.
I think it's also a mindset thing in terms of kids, because at the time where I probably wasn't one of those people who knew it was going to happen, I just remember you actually turning up on a Thursday night at Solitude and we were just standing on the pitch getting photos taken as if this is going to happen, and then we played Portadown on Saturday. Came on, and it was very much a very quick thing to happen, but at the same time it also allows the making of someone. I think, like, when you're pushed into a situation that you're not used to, you've maybe dabbled in a cup game against somebody in the PIL at that stage, there's a big difference than you going and playing.
And I think that, like that, there's a balance too, because you don't want clubs in this day and age saying to any young players, you're going out, you're going to Warrenpoint, you're going such and such, you're going for 6 months and that's it, you've no choice. You don't want that either, but you don't want a crisis meeting now where a club suggests maybe you should go on loan for a few months, get a bit of experience, and then you have emergency meetings and parents, uncles, aunties, cousins, next door neighbours, and anyone that's ever seen a football before is now an expert on why you shouldn't go.
Yeah.
And then you get through all that and it's, well, okay, I will go. We want £400 a week. Like, give me a break.
This is another thing we're going to get to. I was on 50 quid a week Had a wee blue Renault Clio.
Totally overpaid too.
Totally overpaid at that stage, but Tommy Breslin killed me on that.
That was the top earner at Warrenpoint. I don't know what to
Yeah, and that wasn't the point. Marty Murray went with me. Supposedly there was fuel money for Marty, and not one drop of diesel did I get or petrol to get down that.
I wouldn't.
Scumbag, yes, I'm telling you. You'll be listening to this too, and he'll be laughing and be like, "You're right, I didn't give me a capital." But in terms of that, if I'm going to be completely honest at the time, it was more so that side of things where this is happening for you. But I think that I would have preferred it because I wasn't able to think about it. It was like, this is happening on Saturday, you're going to play this game against Portadown. And we were 12 points, pretty much relegated by that stage. And it was one of the best experiences that I've ever had because the team completely rejuvenated within about a week.
Yeah. It definitely was, and that team probably at that time had more of your locals.
Yes, but your Moner, you had your
stages,
the Hugheses.
Players maybe again, like I was saying, that you may not class as top Premiership players, but the environment of like you were in that dressing room, and it was tough to get beaten Saturday, but we had the ability to actually roll in the next Saturday and play Cliftonville and say we could win this.
Yes.
And it wasn't something you said. It's actually something that people actually believe because there's no pressure per se on it. Expectations were quite low. It was always about survival. You were doing the impossible with a very small club. Players that we had in that January window, and then you're taking in a couple of Cliftonville players. And you talk about the lift of that. None of them players would have known you or anything.
No, I hadn't.
You or any of the other players that came in. But they knew you were coming from Cliftonville, and that was just enough. That was such a fad, a new concept for Warrenpoint, and the goodness of Warrenpoint and the players we have, where most clubs would be very closed doors, where they were quite open. The idea is, yes, in you come. If you give us any chance of survival here, brilliant. Here, sit down there, enjoy it. Off we go. And like Warrenpoint even at that stage was still very much in growing stage. As a club, there was nothing compared to even what it is now, and it's still in growing stage. And you're saying, if it's just about getting in and going, but your experience and what you got out of that, if you thought about it for too long before you decided to go, you'd have missed it.
Yeah.
Because you'd say, I'll sit where I am for another 6 months and I'll see at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And at that point, Cliftonville,
nobody wants you. You get released and then you're going trying to find a club somewhere else.
And I suppose for me with players, I just don't understand the concept of I'll stay here, but I'm not playing.
Yeah, I don't get that.
I think there's so many options out there to go and play, or people's, lack of, personal,
like confidence to get out and go and experience it.
If I have to drop even the championship
But then again, I think that, as you've kind of touched on, you haven't really said it as much, but I'll probably say it, but it's more of like an egotistical thing where it's, I'm sitting very comfortable with, just using Cliftonville as an example here, but this bright red tracksuit, everyone knows me, I'm from the area, I'm from Belfast, and my mates all expect me to be at Cliftonville games, and I'm class, but I'm playing a minute.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know how many years ago that was, but it wasn't yesterday. But today, I think we live in a society in football where that's worse today than what it was even then.
Yeah.
Because you have less aggression from clubs to say you're going, Barry's coming down Thursday night, stand there with a shirt, take your photograph and enjoy Portadown on Saturday. If you'd done that now, there would be uproar.
Yeah.
Because players now, they've no self-awareness. I am the best. Why are you the best? Well, my ma says I'm the best, or my dad, or my uncle, or somebody. Yeah. Why? But sorry, why should you play for any team? You haven't played any games. I know, but I could. I know, but you haven't.
Yeah.
So how long do you go before that? They come straight out of youth football, and they're really good at youth football, and they come into senior football, and they might join a full-time club now and be a full-time player and be part of that setup. And it's great. I get that they wanted that. They want to play for Linfield. They want to play for Larne. They want to play for whoever. And they're full-time. They're training every day and they've got the best facilities. And but this is about Saturday, isn't it? That's you only do all that for a Saturday. And I think now we've lost. I think a lot of that youth build-up has lost the notion that, you know, the pinnacle is Saturday. If you're not working towards that, it doesn't matter what tracksuit you're wearing.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I think we need a refresh of that. I think players need to be more hungry, not to tell you that they're good, but to want to prove it.
How do you think that we get to that stage? Because the gap between this reserve, this under-20s football, is no longer under-20s, it's under-16.
Yeah.
And when your first team are dropping down to play an under-16 game, you can't be bothered, you don't get experience from it. Whereas whenever probably we were kids and we spoke about this, you were playing against men.
Yeah.
It was all men's. And how do you think that we get back to that? Is it as simple as going back to that old style of football where men can play in reserve league football and do that? Or
I think years ago there was the reserves. Now you've got the under-20s. Obviously it's younger, and rightly so. Years ago you would have built a wee bit of experience playing for the reserves because you could have had half of first team playing for any reserve teams in any given Saturday, and that brought a whole level of experience and a whole level of different men's game, as opposed to, you don't get men from senior teams now playing in the under-20s.
No.
I know they can, but if I was a manager now, there's no way I'd put a senior player in the...
You would get
the
more out of
100s.
training probably.
100%. And it's controlled in training. You know what you're getting if you're coming back. If you're coming back from injury maybe and it's a wee bit longer and you need a wee touch of the ball competitively, yes, there's a wee benefit in that. But that's a game or two. And then outside that, I'd expect a senior player to go in after one game, being out for 6 months, and after 1 or 2 games going in the under-20s and just being a walk in the park for him.
Yeah.
That's what you expect. So what's he getting out of it? He's getting nothing out of it, and the kids around him's getting nothing out of it either. So it's very much, I think, the gap between 20s, which was the right thing to do, is to make it younger at that age or that level, because it gives them a taste for that senior youth football, if you want to call it, but it's not senior football or any next in here.
Yeah.
I don't think we used the loan arrangements in Northern Ireland the way like the UK does. A team in the UK signs a young player up and promise the first thing they do is
sign them
out and loan.
Yeah.
But we have a loan structure here that only works window to window. In the UK it's more flexible, you know, so you can have players go in and out of loan at different levels multiple times throughout the year. So I can say you go and play 2 months with such and such a team, you can come back.
Yeah.
Where we know here, if I say to you as a manager, you're going on loan in January, chances of you getting a new contract with me in the summer is gone.
Yeah.
Because we use it here as an opportunity to get rid of players.
Yes.
And that's Staffy optics. So you see some of the younger players reluctance to go on loan, to get experience. You can understand why, because there has to be a small percentage that actually return to that club and be better off for it, because we use it as a tactic to offload.
Yeah.
So I think that probably needs, now that might change as more teams become full-time, but it's a greater challenge to get a full-time player out of Linfield, out of Larne, to come and play for Warrenpoint.
But then again, at the same time, if you're sending a Linfield player at a Warrenpoint in time, they were still in the same league. And people want their players to be playing at a high level.
Yeah.
The likes of a loan option for a Linfield to send their kid to Newry in the PIL, they don't want their kid going that low.
No, I think it's too, and that's no disrespect to Newry or any team that's in the PIL. I think there are teams inside the same league or at the top end of the league underneath it that are viable options if them clubs are open to that, obviously. But I think what we don't do here is there is no development plan more times enough for them kids, really good young kids that have made it to a top Premiership team. They need to have development plans for the next step of their career. As in, that means if the club outlines to you as a 20-year-old, you get signed to Larne. Larne, as a 20-year-old, should have a plan. I'm not picking on Larne, I'm just using Larne as an example, but they should have a plan to say to a player, here's where we are, you're a really good player, you're in a 3 or 4 year contract. As part of this step to get you to where we need to be, it's going to involve a period of time out on loan where we can get you guaranteed minutes.
Yeah.
And that should be done before he sits in the bench from the stand for 6 months.
Yeah,
because
unhappy.
then it's a different conversation at that. People talk about how far we've come in professionalism, where that for me is what I'd be talking about. Professionalism, clubs, youth development.
That's just being upfront and honest. And I think that a lot of management at the minute isn't that. It's all very much keep everybody on side, keep players happy, or try and keep players as happy as possible, and then they have to kind of stay because maybe we're light on numbers.
Yeah.
And it's like, we don't really want you going on loan here, because if we get an injury to our two centre forwards, you're going to have to sit on the bench.
And this is how far we still have to go.
Yes.
Because people have this notion that we just change our senior teams into full time and everything's professional. Mm-hmm. But it's not really, because no scouting structures in Northern Ireland. There is no formal scouting networks or whatever. Everyone is a scout, or somebody watches a game or does whatever. If I see you as a young player, either I know a wee bit about you, or I've looked at the stats of you playing for somebody else in Scotland, I'll take you.
Yeah.
But it's at that point the scout should be watching 10 games. Johnny McMurray, he's done this. You've got to report, here's his next steps. If we're going to sign him, we have to tie in for 3 years, and the first year needs to be and then we can reassess after 12, 18 months. But we don't have that. We don't do it.
Do you think we don't do it because we can't do it, or do you think it's because the league's not built that way?
I think the structures weren't in place. Obviously, when we're a part-time league, the manager still today for a lot of clubs is
a burden, full time.
The manager, the coach, he still does a bit of physioing, he still cleans up and then it's scouting. And you're saying, you take that model and look at what they do in England. A proper manager in England isn't a scout.
No, he's just a manager.
He may look at a list of players that come to him, so they've outlined the players that they're looking for, but he's not going looking at players until the very last point where, right, these 5 are serious. They've ticked all our boxes. Now, throw your eye over that, or watch the footage of this. Or where us in Northern Ireland now, the manager's still pretty much a finger in everything, but not overseeing it, actually doing.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge. Now, I can't comment on the full-time clubs and the structures that they have, but I'm pretty sure every manager that I know now would welcome a place or two on their management team for a scout, full-time scout, or
oh God,
somebody who's going to look at the younger players in terms of development terms.
Yeah.
As part of the senior panel. That means that the manager actually doesn't need to spend, because the manager wants to, but he has to separate his time into what is going to be best for the team, and that means more times than enough the players that they're going to go out on Saturday and win them the game. Unfortunately, if you're not in that group, you'll get a wee bit of love, but you're not going to get what you need, really.
So if you were to go back into football management in hindsight, is that something that you would want to put in place going forward? Because, it's heavily reluctant on finances and being able to pay people, but how do clubs...
I think clubs that are serious about themselves, whether that's clubs at lower level and want to work their way up, or whether it's clubs that are now in transition at top level, I think it's just essential. I don't think that it's like any business in the world that has a talent scout. If you go into Google, how many employees have they got? Is there someone in Google that's able to tell the bosses who the best employees are? Absolutely. I don't know what their titles are or whatever, but you can be damn sure that the CEO of Google isn't responsible for recruiting the next up-and-coming
when you
tech
hear
web.
people getting headhunted from X, Y, and Z,
So it happens at every industry, and it happens in football too, but it just doesn't happen in Northern Ireland this minute in time that I'm aware of. Maybe it does in the background, or maybe clubs have a watered down version of it, but any of the clubs that I'm familiar with don't have it. And I think it's a problem for youth development, and I think it's a problem for managers, because it's putting more pressure on them. And I think in general terms of flowing players through, because now we've moved into a model of taking players from outside in.
Yes.
And why is that? Because we can find out more about a player that comes from Scotland and England than we can about players that come from Northern Ireland, because the information's there. And why is that? It's because they come from leagues and clubs that what we're talking about now is already in place. And it's risky for clubs because it's always financially driven, and they're always saying it's a big risk to go and take somebody in, and it's long term. There's nothing short term in it. You're saying, but at some stage we're going to have to get over the hurdle of we invest today for something that's 5, 6, 7 years down the line, and when it's right down there, you don't have to change it. You've got it.
And that's the thing too. It can be a financial reward whenever you end up getting this person to the standard that they're supposed to be at, or you see, and then you do decide to sell them.
And I think we look at it in Northern Ireland still like, well, the benefit there is you could get a player and sell them on.
Yeah.
You're thinking the way we are now in Premiership, definitely in the top half, the wage bands and the money that's involved in it now, and you're saying, how much could potentially you save on a player by just getting the right one in, spending a wee bit of development money on the right players or player group, and actually putting them into your own team?
I would say it's costing you the £600 a week.
Or the transfer fees, which in Irish League would have been a couple of grand here or there, to now where if you're looking for a decent player, you could spend
100 grand, maybe
50, 100, 100 plus grand, plus whatever else on the side.
Yeah. And in terms of that though, and like when you talk about this, and you do talk about the likes of Scotland and down south and all these leagues here set up obviously a lot better. They're probably 10 years maybe in advance than us. Like.
Yeah, they're ahead of us in time scale. Like, they've been doing what they've been doing longer than we have. We have a handful of full-time teams now. We're not a full-time league even.
Yeah.
But you're saying, you hear all these people talk about funding and getting funding in the clubs. For me, if we were looking at youth serious in Ireland, would be related to, well, we have an obvious issue, transfer of good youth players from youth levels, gaining enough experience in senior levels to come to senior football here.
But on the other side of it, for someone who's been in football for as long as you have, you've had to do the opposite. You've had to go and look down south. You've had to go and potentially look in Scotland. You've had to identify players to try and bring in on low budgets, and then it backens the question of, I wouldn't say it's a stigma, but players down south are different than players in the Northern Irish League, and players in Scotland coming across, they're just not the same. So how do you balance that up? Because as you say, you've been in a club that didn't have much finances, and you had to go and do this. This is obviously something you would like to put in place.
You go and do it because A, you have no choice, B, you have no budget, and C, you take what you can get.
Is there a difference in your opinion?
North and south? Yeah.
In terms of what?
It's and I don't mean a good or a bad.
No.
It's like taking a player, you hear it all the time, they're not Irish League players.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's not a
people don't know what that means, but you hear it bandied about all the time. But you take Liverpool at the minute, signing in some of the world's best players, and can't actually perform in a Liverpool team as league champions. And you're saying it's just transition, and this is what I'm saying. No scouting, no full detail, no development plan for any player coming in any detail, then puts more pressure on the manager because he's taking a risk signing you. Mm-hmm. So he knows a wee bit about you, and he's just hoping and praying that when he puts you in on Saturday, he'll just hit the ground.
Yeah.
And to be fair, if most managers are honest, more times than enough, that's the process that they're running.
You're taking
maybe with more detail than I would have been at Warrenpoint now or whatever. They're slightly different. What I done at Warrenpoint and what David Healy does at Linfield is slightly two different levels. So, but the same risk is still there. David might argue at Linfield his risk is bigger than my risk was at Warrenpoint.
Aye, because there's pressure.
Because it comes with all the attachments. So, and we live in a society where time isn't pleasant. A player doesn't get time. A manager gets less time. Mm-hmm. So, managers now are looking at players and saying, well, we'll go for the £1,000 a week player because there's less risk in that. But is it better for us as a club? No, it's just better because I have a better chance of getting a job.
Yeah.
And they're not wrong in doing that. So, and go to Scotland, pick a player out. He's played 50 games in a league that we don't know anything about, but he's played 50 games and he's £1,000 a week. There's a player from wherever, locally league, and he's £200 a week. we'll go with the £1,000 one. Why? Because better chance of it being right for me.
It's just, I do understand completely where you come from, and it's probably been highlighted more so in the last year or two that this is being done, and there is obviously an outreach, and I understand, don't get me wrong, there's obviously some quality players, but I'm not trying to pick on people here, but in terms of, like, as you say, transfer fees and people coming in, the expectations and stuff, like, there's people who've been signed to very big clubs in the last year and a half who have kind of went under the radar because they haven't played or hit the ground running. How do you deal with that? Well, obviously you've had to deal with it from a club who's at the bottom and you're fighting. How do you deal with that if you're the likes of your David Healy and you're like, oh, I've spent this money, and Linfield is, I'm not going to say, like, pressure, fans, everything.
Yeah, and that's what brings me back to bigger picture planning for clubs. We still live in a league that, in my opinion, don't do enough of that. Not from a league point of view, from each club inside it, because it's just about, we need to win the league this year. If you ask Linfield, anyone in Linfield, to start this season, what's the objective for this year? If anyone said them 5 younger players to develop them and get them ready for first team football next year, if they said that, you'd fall off your chair. Like,
yeah,
you know,
definitely.
so the topic's simple. Linfield, Larne, you know, Glentoran, objective this year, win league. Objective next year, win the league.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, and to a certain degree that might be a wee bit more sustainable for them who have finance backers, people that, you know, that maybe don't have to be just as cautious with what they're spending. But in the bigger picture, it's not going to help us as a league having 4 teams or 5 teams that are full time and just able to pull players in from Scotland. We need a league that is better for everyone, for it to sustain a better level of football, because people talk about the gaps opening top and bottom. The gap has been there
for a long time,
as long as I can remember in Irish League football. The numbers might have changed, but the gap's still the same.
Yeah.
And the teams that are now maybe at the bottom section, well, they quite possibly might have been teams 10 years ago that were towards the top section. So all of a sudden now, if Crusaders is an example, who were winning leagues when I was managing at one point comfortably, are now at risk of a relegation battle potentially. I'm not saying that they are, but they're at risk. And because that gap, Linfield's here and Crusaders here, now all of a sudden the gap, the money is coming in the top, such a big problem. Where I'm saying, but if that was Warrenpoint, like it was for me, at the bottom, it was no issues because it was only Warrenpoint.
Yeah.
So the challenge hasn't changed. The names of the clubs have, but the same challenge is still there. That's just the way it goes, like.
And this is the thing too, Crusaders had fine misses when they were in Europe. They were able to fight and pay money, and whenever you miss out on that sort of budget that you're expecting to come in from Europe and you don't get it for a couple of years.
Which goes to show you that it isn't 100% just dedicated to, if you've got money, you'll be at the top.
Yeah. Because
you can have it for a while and lose it. You can go through a period where you lose part of it and move up and down, but where's the plan? You know, these clubs that are just earmarking will stay on Linfield's tail, they're full time, and we want to be, or other clubs in our league that aren't full time yet, want to be Larne.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that you shouldn't want to be Larne, you should want to be better more. Your aspirations shouldn't be the best that we have in our league. We should look around the place in more detail. Go down south, go to Scotland, go to England at appropriate levels, not in the Premier League teams in England and do stuff like that, but and think, well, are we doing the right things behind the scenes as a club? Like, I don't know. And I get academies is a big push now at the minute. Nobody seems to get the draft. Academies do a really good job. There's no doubt about that. But take Linfield. And I use Linfield as an example because they're the biggest, you know, talking club that we have. You're saying, how many youth players coming through Linfield's ranks who have the best youth players, apparently, and make it to their first team? Now, I'm not saying that they have to, but what's the point of academies?
Yeah.
Now, if they're selling them off and they're working it as a business, that's fine. If that's their strategy, I don't know what their strategy is. But even the younger players then that they're taking in from other clubs, did they have a strategy for the top end development section of that? I don't know. But I can bet that teams, certainly as you go down the league, don't have.
Yeah.
It's just unrealistic to ask a 20-year-old to come in and play 30 games this year and win you the league or do whatever. It could happen, but chances are,
It's very unlikely.
you know, it's like taking a salesman in to sell runners. He's never sold anything in his life. He's not going to be this top seller this year. He could be. He could fluke it, but chances are he won't be.
There's always one dime, but let's be honest,
So,
100 times out of...
but it's one out of every
Yeah.
1,000 players, maybe, or whatever. Maybe it's even worse stats than that, probably, when you break it down.
When we look back at your career, obviously you were at Warrenpoint for a long time. You went through rough patches of Warrenpoint, you went through good patches of Warrenpoint. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, because I was a part of it at the time with you, was the relegation at Warrenpoint. It was different. It came right down to the last game of the season. There was controversy in terms of refereeing decisions and stuff like that. But one thing that I wanted to ask you was, it materialised over the summer, because it was never a thing where the game is potentially going to be played again. It's going to be played in a couple of weeks' time. The referee was a Carrick fan. There was all these things going on. It was a double header. We were a point clear at this stage. So obviously there was a lot of things that were involved. You went to tribunals, you went to court. There's lawyers involved because we were wrongfully put down on the day. But what's that like? Because I haven't heard of something like that being done before, and I don't think I've heard of something like that being done since.
And again, that just, you know, sums up what we had to do for where we were. And it was very much a case of, not that bad things happen, loads of teams, loads of clubs, and that's fine. What happened to us, that was an injustice. Like, it just was a footballing injustice, and I think everybody respected that. It wasn't, it was just an error by one person, that, and such a grave, public, obvious error when we all look at it. And you're saying the chances of us winning any of the aftermaths of that was always very slim.
Yeah.
But what if? Because potentially that decision could have ruined the club.
Yeah.
Or any club, not just Warrenpoint, but especially a club the size of Warrenpoint, because it's enough to bust your bubble. You know, you've got a lot of honest, hard-working people in a small group that are given everything and more that they have, just to have you there competing.
Yeah.
And when something is taken out of your hands, so you've done all your work in the background, jumped all the hoops and loops and done everything, and then somebody just takes it off it.
Yeah.
Undeservedly. That has potential to wreck any situation. So at that point, we felt we had to fight it or argue it, because if for nothing else, you had to motivate the people to keep going behind the scenes and give them that wee bit of hope, and then use whatever the outcome of that as a tool to keep everybody as tight-knit as possible
To go back.
to get back, you know, because it's not football just wasn't enough in Warrenpoint, because you didn't have the cream of the crop. You didn't have a team where you could just say, we've got the best team in the league, we'll just keep all our contracts, we'll go next year again, we'll just go straight back.
Yeah.
You didn't have that. So fighting that wasn't anti-IFA or anti-league or anti-referee, or it was just an injustice. And we don't have procedures in football for them injustices to undo them. Would it even have been right to replay the game, or to, you know, because then you open the door for somebody else's injustice? There's no right or wrong, but we felt we had to argue it for that reason, for the small chance that we might get something out of it, and then for the bigger reasons of being.
So you had a plan around that to kind of, either way, yes, we may go back, but at the other side of it, it was like, this will help us next year.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And a wee bit of stubbornness and ignorance of if we can, we will.
Yeah. You spearheaded that yourself. You wanted that. Because I remember speaking to you at the time, and it was like, I have to do it.
Yeah, I think if you sat back as a businessman, you would say, don't. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. Nothing's going to come out of it. But football is one of them industries, isn't it, where common sense doesn't always come. Definitely not with me anyway. And, you know, we had like-minded people in and around Warrenpoint with me at that time that, you know, we didn't go to the complete last stage that we could have.
Okay.
And that would financially been a crazy decision. So we spent a few pounds to go.
I reckon you probably petered with it though. I bet you're probably like...
We did consider it, there's no doubt. We did. And we considered the cost in it and looked at the cost in it, and we just thought, no. At that point, it was no good for the league, it was no good for us, the club, it was no good for our team, and it would have just put everything in limbo, and the potential of losing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds on top of that. So it didn't make sense. And it might have had the negative, the opposite impact of what we wanted it to have, was bringing everyone together. It might have just
dissolved,
fell to death with everyone. So, but I think, you know, even from a player's perspective, you need to have, you fight for everything you have. Oh, that's an injustice, right? Relegated next week, off we go.
Well, this is the thing, because most people in at that stage had already maybe agreed to go back. So you knew that I'm starting again, as we've touched on here, with 4 or 5. I think at that stage I'd kind of agreed that I was potentially going to Ballymena. I think Marty Murray was going to Carrick or somewhere like that. John McWiggins there. Big Mark Clark had went to Carrick again. And you're saying, going, like, the majority of that group has left. In terms of the actual outcome of it, what were the reasons behind not putting... Do you remember the reasons behind why they didn't go back and allow the game to potentially be replayed or given injustice? Because it was very clear. And when you look at the clip of the penalty that was given, and then obviously, never mind Johnny Barr not catching the ball from the penalty, which was chipped into him. Like, because I think the players, Dungannon players, knew that's bang out of the order here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think there was that sort of notion where you saved the penalty to score the rebound.
Big Mitch came out of nowhere. You've never seen a boy hit a ball harder in a 6-yard box to score.
Therefore, you had a chance to save yourself.
You did.
But my point is, people's mindset, whereas it was gone at that stage, it didn't even matter. The kick was the kick. What happened after that, sure, everyone's heads were all over the place. But to replay it, I look back now, I would have taken it then. If I was sitting on a panel now, should we replay the game or not? Then it begs the question being, do you replay every game a referee gets something wrong that causes the wrong result or the wrong outcome? It's a big door to open, and the structures and the guidance and the sort of connectors, whether it be FIFA, UEFA, us, IFA, aren't there to allow that.
Yeah.
And even if they were there, they would be that restrictive on how you would use them that it might work for us, but maybe others, but they're not, the rules aren't there. So you can only be governed by the rules. And really the only argument that we would have had bringing it forward would be football integrity. You know, that was it. And it's such a loose, you know, FIFA, UEFA make a decision like that. It's a worldwide decision based on what the outcome of a Warrenpoint challenge, you know, relegation will be over. So you could imagine the implications of, you know, City on Sunday not getting a penalty decision that might mean that they beat Liverpool, or they might get a European spot, or there's millions of pounds. You know, it would open a door of absolute frenzy. Yeah, no doubt about it. Would have been funny to see how the IFA dealt with it. But outside that, I didn't think anything would have
came too much from it.
So yeah, taking the emotion out of it, you look at it now and you think
smart.
It didn't happen because we're not there as a game.
Yeah,
you know, you can see how VAR corrects decisions in real time. Imagine if we had a system that corrected decisions a week later. It would be chaos.
I know. Yeah. Everybody would be up in tribunals, wouldn't they? Like, the games wouldn't even finish. Season would never be done.
People would just come to standstill.
Yeah. But I do remember it, and I was like, God. And as you say, massive, massive injustice. In terms of, obviously, us, we were there together. That season was probably one of the best seasons of football I had. And I don't know how you managed to do it. And one of the things that I always admired the most was You always made a comment to me, and I remember sitting talking to you a few times, and you said that as a successful businessman, you employ people around you who are good at your weaknesses. You always seem to employ or get people in around you who are very good at other aspects of the game. A lot of people don't do that because they're wanting maybe just to be, I know what I'm talking about. But you were always very much the complete opposite near enough. You always wanted to have the best people. I think at one stage you had 3 managers. I think it was you, there was Rodney, and there was somebody else, and I was like, how the f*** do you have 3 managers here? Like,
I think that comes down to you have to be comfortable in your own position, your own situation. You know, obviously, well, there would have been Gavin Dykes maybe at the time.
Dykes, yeah,
there would have been Rodney, Cookie, there would have been me, and they're big characters. Any one of them could take your job in the morning.
Yes, 100%.
If you're that way inclined.
And most managers would be, wouldn't they?
And probably rightly so. And maybe that's why I wasn't that successful in football. I think nobody's good at everything. Or nobody, even if you are, you don't have time to do everything. So I think it's important that you have people that you can trust and you understand. I'm not one for, you know, there's a job for one advice. I'm not that. No. You can have a job with me if you're good at doing something. Mm-hmm. If you don't have, and I know you're not getting a job.
Yeah.
So you have to bring something to the table. Ideally, bring something that I don't have time to do, or that you're better at it than I am, or I haven't a clue. It's just not my thing. And I think it's okay to admit that. Lots of managers would be under pressure by saying, oh, I'm no good at player recruitment, or I'm no good at, you know what, I'm not a very good coach, which people find strange. If, as a manager, if you're trying to be everything, and I would always say, the way I had to run my teams was my decision, my way, because that's, you needed something definite, you know, to keep the group moving in the same way. So if I'm out on the training pitch trying to coach you and have a bit of crack and do whatever, and then 2 seconds later I'm the manager to say, no, we're not doing that, Johnny. You're playing with people's emotional side. So I always find it was easier to have your coaches that were better integrated with the players in a training environment, so that when I walked on the training pitch to do something, everybody took heed and understood that this was a vital piece of information or whatever. And I didn't need to be one that was constantly in every detail of everything. And that was because you trusted the people most times that you had around you, that they could carry out the job well. Players were brilliant, because if they didn't like your staff, I always had the scenario being, players were very comfortable to come and say, don't have him do that, that's crap.
Yeah.
You know, where he's no good at that, and we would.
You got that a lot with Giller, didn't you?
But I mean, it's separating the fact from the opinion.
Yeah.
Too, you know, you have to be very conscious that some people will just think, I'm no good at this and you're no good. It doesn't mean that you are. It's just his opinion on how you're doing it. Or maybe, you know, it's a right back drill and you're not in the right back position, and you are the right back, and you know, I'm not going in there and start it, so you're not going to like it. So I think good people around you that know their value and know their position and know that they have to work as part of your team. I always sort of said that when things were good, bar me interviews that I had to do, you never see me stand at the front taking praise.
No.
But when things were bad, you were always there, and you were letting the players or the staff have their moment in the limelight, and then when it was difficult, pushing them to the back and starting out, taking that pressure off them. And I think that's what managers should be. But I'm not personally motivated that way, so that comes naturally to me. Where today I see lots and lots of managers that are too busy expressing their own importance and what they've done and how they were the key tactical decision for that win, and you know, taking that limelight maybe off players that should be getting it. And this is very much a team's,
or the opposite, in terms of putting the pressure, saying that we worked on such and such and we done this, or players didn't do this, and then it kind of flips it then, because there's all. And I've done that,
and you've heard me do that at different clubs, where I've said, yeah, if the players had stuck the game plan, they would have a chance, but they didn't. They decided not. But my players will know that when I say that that was actually true. On Thursday night we worked on, and we didn't do that.
Yeah.
So he's right in what he's saying. But you see a lot of times players just being poor result, player's fault. Good result, manager's fault.
Yeah.
You're thinking, it's a great life, isn't it? I just never had that.
Anyway,
it wouldn't be my cup of tea. You know, even I remember meeting one of the supporters club members at Cliftonville when I was there. I think it might have actually been after I was gone, and he said the biggest problem you had was you didn't front it. You never beat your chest when you won a game. You never stood in the wall. You never threw yourself in the crowd. You never. It's just not it's not my thing. And their notion always would have been you would have survived longer
if you had done.
If you had actually affronted yourself and took the credit when there was any credit to be dished out. But it's
just not you.
It's just not.
Now, you tell you what, you're probably one of the most different managers that I've ever had. I think that's probably because I know you as probably personally over the years, but as a manager, when I compare managers, I would say that you're very different, and that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I think that I've never experienced anyone that.
Everybody's got their style. I have my way to do it. I do it very black and white, but I do it very personally. Like you say, if you know me, if you come in and you're in the first 3 weeks, you might find it quite difficult to grasp, but once you break down that hard exterior and realise actually sometimes you're best just to let him at it there. 100%. He'll be fine in enough time.
I've sort of figured that out. I wanted to sort of bring this up at the end, but I feel like it's very fitting because when we went back, obviously Crusaders, we had spoken, I was like, do you know what, I want out, and the whole stuff happened with Crusaders. Same for you, Warrenpoint, went and had a coffee and you were saying about the lads and speaking up, and nobody's really speaking up at the time. You know, no problem, sure, you know what you want to get, do you know what I mean? And you were happy enough, so even then the training goes as well as it does on a Thursday night, shouting and screaming at people, and you're like, fuck, love it, no, brilliant, love it. And I'm like, fuck, I'm in. Saturday comes, after the game, you're shouting and screaming, I think we drew 0 each, and I went to talk and you go, see you, fuck up, you're only in the door. I just me right there, he's back, and then after you start laughing, arm around his shoulder, and I was like, you got me.
I mightn't have got you many times after that, but you would have taken that because you would have known.
Yes.
In that split, I was going to say a split couple of seconds, in that 20 minutes, probably a rant,
off on it.
You'd be saying, you're just best for now.
And then after that, I was like, do you know what, I'll just leave it. I'll just speak to him on Tuesday. And then you go in, there's a cup of tea in the thing, and you're sitting in the chair, and you're talking away, but I'll never forget it. And I remember just laughing at myself going.
But a lot of times you do that, and you do that with experienced players, because you know you don't get the head ball reaction, but it's the impact it has on other players just around the dressing room who maybe have an opinion that they shouldn't have, and you're just saying, just put that back in the box.
You're so smart.
Don't be stupid.
I'll take it down to you playing games. Next sport I want to talk to you about next, is you obviously go to Cliftonville. You take the Cliftonville job after Warrenpoint, but before you do that and before you get into that, how many trophies did you end up collectively winning? And in terms of that, I mean trophies, I mean promotions with Warrenpoint, because I don't think that people look at Barry Gray and say Barry Gray's been very successful as a manager without actually knowing the background of where you came from. And I'm hoping that this does sort of highlight exactly what you've done, because what you've done is probably more than what most people will ever dream of. Yeah,
there's lots of, I don't know how many, Johnny, honestly. There was lots of trophies and lots of celebration nights and you know, whatever comes with that. But I would always say the success for me as a manager was keeping Warrenpoint in the league, in the Premiership for as long as we did. No trophies for that. No. It was you scrape relegation or you playoff games year in, year out. That's fine, but
at least you're there.
You know, they keep a team, a club. Warrenpoint weren't the senior club ever before we went to the Premiership, and even at that, like, you know, I remember in DC in the playoff night when we won it, and everyone's going bananas. And I remember walking in the dressing room and saying to Paddy Dinsmore, what are we going to do? You're not rolling this into a club that's done it before.
Yeah.
You've no committee with any experience. You've no board, you've no players, you've no money, you've no recruitment. You don't know how you're paying for your next kit. You know, to put you out in the pitch next season, never mind anything else. And no ground or club to play from. You know, and you're saying, who don't do this?
Yeah.
And most managers would just get on with it. Because of my club involvement at that, I had to grow us on the pitch 10% while growing the club off the pitch 60%.
Aye, while doing your own
cycle, you know,
job
on
and
top of everything else. And as a manager, I thought that the ability to keep Warrenpoint in the Premiership for as long as we did
was a 7 out of what, 10?
was right up there. Yeah, it was like it's not the unthinkable now, but in the first year of Warrenpoint being promoted, number one, nobody ever thought for a second Warrenpoint would ever play in the Premiership.
Yeah,
I remember saying it in the club years ago, probably with a few drinks in me, and people thinking this boy's off his rocker.
Yeah,
Yeah, and at that time I probably was probably thinking, you know, it was a pipe dream. But to get there 1 year with nothing and then stay there for a considerable time it's miracle stuff. Like,
did you always want to move on?
But for me as a manager, I had no notions of moving on. It was a bit like, as I came through my career, the plan was what was in front of you. If you're happy you're doing, and Warrenpoint was brilliant for me. I loved my time, but then I came to a stage where it was too much for me. Being the manager at that level consistently and actually having to do what you do in the club on top of life was just too much. It got to the point where you were starting to make decisions for the club as opposed for you as a manager of the team.
So you were like detriment to your own downfall, and you were taking stuff away from yourself because that would benefit the overall club instead of you on the pitch.
And it wasn't healthy for me or the club for that matter. You need a manager that wants to drive his team against all the odds, against all the budgets, and push boundaries, where me as a manager had to push a boundary with me making a decision as a board member. And you're like, you're fighting yourself.
Yeah.
Because as the manager head, you're saying,
but it's going to be an easy way for you to get more money, and you just, right, boy, I'm taking more money to the budget here, and you go, all right.
That's fine if the budget's there.
Yeah.
And it's being reallocated from somewhere else. But when it's not there at all, the easy answer for every other board member is, we don't have it.
And as you say, you're not looking at it as a manager who doesn't know these things. You're looking at it as someone who completely knows where every finance is.
And that's, so you know the challenges, and you know if they squeeze a bit more into this, for me as a manager, that's putting all them people under pressure. Or it's taken away from the academy budget, or it's taken away from the pitch budget, or whatever. So, and I think at that point, I think Matthew Tipton came in after me then and managed, and at that point it was me stepping down, and probably the bigger picture would have been to focus on club stuff. But there was other good club people there, but I think that's where it just unbalanced completely. And I felt that my course as manager
was done.
I didn't think that I was helping the strength of the club at that stage staying as manager. And that's where you step down, but not to step out of the club. You were stepping down just to maybe to show the club how a different manager would do things differently.
Yeah.
And that's...
Did you remain on the board?
I did very briefly at that. I was still there, still doing things. But it was a very short period of time then when I went to Cliftonville, so it wasn't years and years. So.
Would most people down there have thought that you had stepped down knowing that job was going to be offered to you?
No. Because I stepped down, Matthew Tipton took over, if I'm right, October sort of time, or...
Did you have a say in bringing Tippy in?
Tippy was part of my staff at the time, so...
So yeah, you were the one who obviously said that I'm going to step, and you...
It seemed like a good fit, you know, and it was... everyone seemed to be happy enough with what it looked like, so... So yeah, no, when Tippy took over at that stage, it was, 6-7 months later, the Cliftonville thing materialised, I think. Can't remember exactly, but... So it wasn't that... There was no... Again, like everything I've done in my football career, you know, you don't think too far ahead, because you never put yourself in a position where me stepping out as a manager, I never thought for 1 second that anyone else would ever want me.
Yeah.
So that was the way it was.
Well, they did, obviously, but in terms of when they did, is there a big change? Like, obviously, in terms of quality and what you can then...
People talk to me now about Cliftonville today, and they talk the same as what I took over. What I took over and what I went into Cliftonville is in the Cliftonville today.
Okay.
Now, I don't go out publicly to say, and I won't here either, but, you know, when I came into Cliftonville to do a particular job on the pitch with, again, not massively dissimilar than what Warrenpoint was, because you didn't have the budget that everyone thought you had. You had a group of players that were very much at the end. I don't mean they were useless or anything, but they were end. It was going to need change, it was going to need freshness. But like that, I also knew that as I changed this, there was going to be unpopular decisions, because you were going to be moving on or ending the Cliftonville career of players that were league winners. Mm-hmm. He also went into an environment in Cliftonville that was close-knit, and some of that close-knitness wasn't a benefit.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it was a massive negative, but what are we doing this year? We do the same as we done last year. You know, what are we doing this week? Do the same as we've done last week. You know, and it was very much a case of, this is what we've always done. And I always use the example of, I remember taking in Remy Adams, the strength and conditioning coach, and the challenges that I had at senior level and player level of taking in a strength and conditioning coach who worked with the players for 40 minutes a week pre-session.
Okay. As in, like, loosening up, foam rolling, all
very, very basic strength and conditioning. Not, there was no gym, there was no inside facilities, so you couldn't do anything, so it was all out on the pitch.
Yeah.
And I always remember that, say, came in, he was in for 3 weeks, we 3 wins in a row, everything's grand, players are yapping, my hamstrings are tight, and physio's off his rocker because all the players are saying, I've got a sore, this and that. They're doing exercises they've never done before. That's what strength and conditioning is. Uneducated, grand, it's fine, just deal with it, loosen them out, move on. 4th week comes, Remy does his 4th session. This weekend we're playing the River and we get beat. Speaking to one of the board members after the game, between us getting to the changing room, me doing my media and doing whatever, and then sitting having a chat with the board members, and him saying, I was only after talking to such and such, he says we're beat today because all the players are wrecked because of that strength and conditioning stuff. You know, and you're saying, funny, it didn't have a negative impact the last 3 weeks when we won the 3 games, but that was the sort of mentality. Knew was difficult.
Yeah.
It was difficult for lots of tiers, lots of players above and beyond, and it was difficult to change that. And you knew, and it needed huge change. A lot of change people didn't see. It was behind the scenes, and again, like that, recruitment was a challenge because you were Cliftonville, and at that stage, you know, the whole Catholic Protestant thing was still a challenge.
Okay.
Huge challenge. You were too far away to recruit out of the south. You didn't pay enough money. So it left you, you know, very refined or defined in where you could recruit from. And then you had all this change that I had to implement and be the recruitment manager and the scout and the whatever, because Cliftonville didn't have that structure, that team in the background. Don't know if they have it now or not, but any club at that level or sees them at that level, it needs to have a better backbone of key personnel.
Yeah.
Cliftonville didn't have it, and that's not a negative. That's where they were at that stage. No European money, really restricted financially, which a club and a team.
Were you surprised going into Cliftonville that the finances were as low or as restrictive as they were for such a big club?
You mentioned earlier, years before that, you came and played for me at Warrenpoint. It was 50 quid a week. I had players play for me at Cliftonville for the entire period that I was there. Multiple players in their starting 11 at £50 a week. Them players
wasn't there at that stage.
got us into Europe. and competed in European games.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm saying people won't believe it. I'm not saying the whole squad was in 50. I'm not saying that.
No, I get it. But some of them.
To think that £50 a week players were playing for Cliftonville,
Yeah.
and you're expected to at least get to a European playoff game is
Crazy.
I'd love to see their budget now
Yeah.
compared to what I had then. And I know even when Paddy came in after me, so we done, and me and Paddy would joke about this regularly enough, so we done the chunky work. So we fired in the recruitment, done whatever, got to Europe. The European money cycles, so when you get to Europe, you don't get it. So Paddy got my European money, you know, and it was great for him. It gave him probably more in the war chest to recruit and do what he needed to do on the pitch than what, you know, I would have seen. So, you know, you got to Europe and you had an Irish Cup final in year one, and you're saying where we are at the minute, it's hard to go anywhere near that in the second year. And people thought the expectations were like, well, next year we got the cup final this year, next year we should win a cup, and sure, we got to Europe this year, so next year we should definitely get to Europe too. And that's the cycle that it's in. But that was the job, and that was a very successful job. Like you know, Jared Lawler was the chairman at the time, and me and Jared would speak regularly about what we had to do at that time. But inevitably, when you lose so many games in a row or in a period, it will get you sacked, and that's
what happened.
That's what happened at Cliftonville. It wasn't. I'm sure there were people there that were happy to see me go, and I'm sure there were people there that thought maybe you should have given more time, but that's the nature of the business, isn't it?
See, whenever you're in that run, is that the first time that you've kind of been in sort of like a rut? Is that the first time that throughout your managerial career at Cliftonville you were sort of under pressure because you didn't get a few wins in the boys?
Yeah, it probably was. I think prior to that, in your first season, you had the newness, you had everyone seeing change of players, there was a settling period. You've probably get your first season as a manager, and we were in Europe and a cup final before this, so it was a good finish. Then you hit a patch. Now, for me, I would always say my downside is all the change hadn't been completed with the team. So we had a core still inside the squad that were potentially a problem core. Okay, not a big core, just a small core, but they had a lot of influence. So, see, when the chips are down and you've got people pushing for you in the right direction, you only need one or two not to be doing that to tip it. And I would always say a regret for me was I maybe didn't get rid of them players before that.
Right.
They got the benefit of the doubt. And why did they get the benefit of the doubt? Because they had the benefit of the doubt from the board.
And is that the thing where then they are able to prolong their time at the club too? Because they're thinking, I'm maybe not playing much, or I'm not doing X, Y and Z, but if I get him out here, there's a good chance of me getting another year or getting...
Possibly, yeah. And it's a personality thing. I didn't bow to them the same way that they would have liked maybe for me to bow to a league winning player with 2 medals or whatever. My notion would have been, that was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's great, but that's no good to me now. You know, what are you going to do for me today? And maybe in contract situations that I didn't give them, and me being stuck with them. Some of the contracts situations at that stage, you would have questioned why they got as long on deals that they did. But it was the Cliftonville way of doing things at that time.
Like rewarding you for your past success.
Which was very successful for them through that period. But I think it's just, it was challenging and different. And then you had, obviously, the challenges that came off the pitch.
Okay.
With certain players.
Okay.
So...
Were you able to go into that, or?
Very highly publicised. Obviously, as a manager, I got dragged into a lot of that. And I supported players in difficult positions publicly. They'd never done any harm to me. They were very good players for me on the pitch, obviously. Had publicly things going on from a legal point of view outside of that. And I split opinions because I backed that player as a player because he was very good for me on the pitch. It wasn't my job to place him in terms of what had happened years past.
Yeah.
And that didn't work great for me at senior level, at board level, because you knew when it comes to a vote,
you're on the line.
That section that are anti that player aren't voting for me.
Yeah.
And I knew that at that time, but that's the human piece of me comes in. You play for me, you've got a court case coming up over here, you've scored 20 odd goals for me from midfield, take you in the next season, court case raises his head again, do I want you to play for me? Absolutely. 23 goals from last year that I'm going to have to find a replacement for with no money.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
My notion at that point was back him or sack him.
Well, this is the thing too, like, you shouldn't be held accountable for that, considering the fact is it's not you've done it, one, you have no say in it too, but also, it's probably cliche, but innocent until you're sort of proven.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And
but I'd always
you see that at higher levels and higher clubs too.
You do. And here, but this is what I'm saying about the board at that time.
Yeah.
And your people in that board at that time were saying, sorry, it's not my job to sack him.
Yeah.
You as a board decide he's out or he's in, or suspend him or do whatever. Or if they were telling me he's available for selection,
he's at your
then
disposal.
he's a player. So
yeah.
If he's a player for me and he plays for me, I'm going to support him like I do any players. But that was a negative for a portion of that. And, well, I can't do anything about that. I wouldn't change what
you did.
If we had to do it tomorrow again, I would do exactly the same thing, because that's my character. That's how I manage. I manage people. I don't manage players. It's the people side of it. And you're saying they're good for me on the pitch, I'll be good for them the best I can outside that.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't, it just didn't fit some people's narratives. And I'd always say, I don't know what my run at Cliftonville was at the tail end, but I think it was like Dungannon had beat us a couple of times, once in the cup, once in the league, and I think there was 5 or 6 games where we only had 1 win and 2 draws. And
it's not like you've, no, it's not like you've lost 9 in a row.
No. So it suited a certain.
Aye. They were just waiting for any sort of hiccup for you to.
And you had board members at that time that were very much just fans.
Yeah.
And no
football knowledge, no business sense.
And that's the problem. And I'm not saying I was any better, but I'm very black and white, so them type of people don't work for me at that level. And it's very much a case of, if you don't like me, that's fine. Like, I never put up any results, weren't the thing. I could have argued and said I'm not going anywhere, but the reality of it was at that stage, and weeks before that, I had said to Jared, start hunting. This is coming to its end here. Yeah. And we knew why, and it just wasn't the results.
And as a chairman, he kind of knew that was on the cards too. Like, he could see that from your point of view, what was potentially going to arise.
Yeah. The Jared Luther as a chairman for me was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I get he may not be everybody's cup of tea, but what Jared done for me is exactly what he said, and what I done for him was exactly what I said. There was such a high level of respect for what my opinion was. He respected it, and vice versa. And I would imagine the challenges that he had at board my challenges were nothing compared to
what he probably done in the background.
What he sucked up for me in the background, 100%. And that's true, that off pitch stuff and all that GH. He was as supportive to me as a manager as he possibly could have been in that time, with probably his restrictions as well.
I have to say, I do like him. I've done a lot of work with him recently. Probably as a kid I didn't like him because he was the chairman, and it probably didn't work out for me the way that I wanted to, but as a naive 18-year-old, you don't understand football. You don't understand the pressures and what comes with it, and I always speak to him about it now, and we laugh about it because we do a bit of work together, and he's like, you were hard work to deal with, but at the same time I was like, I never liked you because this, but it's stupid looking back because you don't actually understand anything.
It's that lack of maturity and life experience, 100%. Too, isn't it?
And then you actually look back on yourself and reflect, you go, why did I even remotely do that? What I want to talk to you about next is, obviously, things materialise throughout your life, and we've touched on the ups and downs and highs and lows and stuff, but you take a job at Newry. You go back to Warrenpoint, and we're kind of skipping ahead here because I'm cautious of time and different things like that, but Newry becomes something completely different. It's probably something completely different in terms of what anybody ever expected to happen, but you're thinking you're going to go in and do a job at Newry. Everything's going to be normal. Barry will end up getting Newry back to where they should be, and actually, and said freshly relegated. But it only lasts for a certain period of time, and I think it's been widely documented that the struggles and obviously whatever happened with you happened. Talk to me about that. What was that like? What actually did happen, and what was it?
I think, well, it was a shock in local circles. Obviously, me going to Newry from being at Warrenpoint for so long.
That's first off, like a traitor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's not talk about anything other than that. Like, left Warrenpoint a ditch.
And I get that. If I had stayed at Warrenpoint much longer at that point, there would have been a strong case. At that stage, Warrenpoint's impact on my life was off the Richter scale.
Okay.
So I had to make a life decision for me, my wife, my kids. Something had to change.
Why was it so bad, if you don't mind me?
It was so bad because I was so invested in us as a club. I spent so much time, so much energy, so much commitment, so much money, and everything else that came with that it got to the point where you were completely blinded. Everything outside of Warrenpoint was second.
Okay.
And that wasn't healthy. It wasn't fair. It's bad enough football commitment, doing what it does in our families and our loved ones and everyone else around it. But when your businesses are impacted, when your family's impacted, when your kids are impacted, you've got to get to the point and understand why. We had just went through that relegation, the clerical error or the licensing issues at Warrenpoint at that stage. And I went back into Warrenpoint at that point with commitments from other people there that I wouldn't be left on my own. And that's pretty much where I was for a long time before that, with a lot of historic problems that now were my problems.
Okay.
And not my doing. Then the relegation was another one that wasn't my doing but fell on my plate. So it just, the balance, it wasn't marginally off, it was gone. So you have to prioritise the ones closest to you first of all.
See, before we go further, was this ambition for you because of what you'd been through? So when you take the first relegation, and then obviously we know that Warrenpoint was then relegated again by another crazy, stupid decision, or as you say, clerical error. It's very uncommon that it happens, and it kind of seems like it's just happened to the one club.
Yep.
So,
and there's reasons for that. And I'm saying, if it's poor now and we're working towards good, no problem. If it's poor and you're just fighting it to get the next week, then you've got to go. One person can't run a club. So I had stepped down as manager previous to that because the influence of manager and club and the mix, in my opinion, wasn't right. I came back to Warrenpoint because we were struggling manager-wise. There was a board there at that point, and I came back in the notion being that there would be no involvement or very little involvement by football and no board stuff. And that was fine for a short period, and then it just disappeared, disintegrated, and went totally back to
the old way it was.
Barry Gray is the cleaner, the physio, the board members, runs the shop, does the this, does the bills, pays this, and it was going to end in complete bust for the club and for me. So I felt the best way for me to do that was a managerial change, because automatically if I manage someone else, I can't be involved in the board Warrenpoint. So to this day, I'm still waiting for any of the board members or any committee members to actually understand why I left, because it was easy for them. You went to Newry, therefore you're whatever name you are, and you're saying, but you're missing the point. All the problems were there. I've left for them. It isn't the managerial job. So the best thing Newry ever done for me was getting me out of that situation. Not out of Warrenpoint, but out of that situation that I found myself in that Warrenpoint club. Newry, on the face of it, ticked all the boxes from a managerial point. Relegation battle, knew what it was. And I remember speaking to the guys involved, and I said to them at my own kitchen table in my house, saying, you're relegated. You are relegated. we'll give it a go, but they're relegated.
Black and white.
There's really good teams that don't, but we'll give it a go, make a fist of it, see how it goes. And we did do that to a certain degree. But the promises of what Newry had and could do and would do were only that.
Yeah.
It was only lip service. So I found myself from one situation into another situation, and then I get sick in the middle of it all, which is, and looking back, me getting sick was probably, from a football point of view, was the best thing that could have happened to me, because it took me out of it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that you were looking for something to get out? Or were you fully...
I think looking for cancer.
No, I don't mean...
Extreme, even from...
No, yes, and so that's not that I've... Well, didn't mean it like that. But I mean, in terms of something to give you a break, obviously you would have preferred it not to be. Probably similar to the knee. I think that I probably, looking back on my situation, I probably needed to come out of football because I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
And the only way that I probably was going to come out of football if it was taken away from me. And looking back, I'm thinking, I've been so much happier now in the last 9 months.
Yeah,
but I think, yes, you went through something completely different, but did you want something to kind of...
it was different. At the time, no, and I can't look back and say now, I think I did. I think I took the new job knowing the chances are you're going to be in Championship.
And you're fully committed to get
that was realistic. Well, that wasn't the end of the world, because what I was led to believe was that Newry wanted
to go back.
When you said to me, we want to be a Premiership team, I expect that statement to mean
you want to go back.
A certain level of professionalism, a certain level of drive, a certain level of commitment, a certain level of financial
gain.
Power.
At least, I felt.
There was none of that. So Newry, when I went in and you get going, you're straight in the football side, so you don't realise a lot of the peripheral stuff. I use an example. Small tit for tat thing. I actually think it was the Cliftonville game. No, second game. In the round, the first few games, players were out warming up pre-match. And I remember saying, 2 boys out here and your jumper, 2 boys out and my jumper, and 3 boys out and, bare bellies nearly. And you're saying, stand side of pitch thinking, why is everyone wearing different kit? No. Yeah. Into the kit one that says, Dorothy, can we go and get tops for all, put everyone in the same stuff? We don't have warm-up gear. I said, what do you mean we don't have warm-up gear? Like, what are people wearing? Well, that's their own training gear. And I'm like, what do you mean we don't have warm-up? You had your kit. And I'm thinking, no warm-up t-shirts, no warm-up tops, no wind cheaters, no, I'm thinking, that's like, I thought she was joking at first. I'm thinking, it's in a bag somewhere in the cupboard, just go and get the bag. No, we don't have it. Thinking. So, in the preparation to say it was the Cliftonville game, which was a relegation battle against a team totally in form, and you're saying you having to have a conversation with the vice chairman or chairman or whoever it was there, and saying somebody needs to get me warm-up game for next Saturday, or else you'll be looking for a new manager. This is a disgrace. Grand. First training session. Pitch is flooded. We can train in one of the cages out the front. Now the cages is the size of this room. Yeah. I'm thinking, I'm not training there. We've got you a pitch. Great, take me up there. Hockey pitch. Sand.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, we've nowhere else to train. So we train the first night. It's like a skating rink. Yeah. I'm thinking, this is just obviously, one of them weeks where everything's gone. Next week's the same. No training facilities. No. If it rains, you can't go on the pitch. I'm thinking, seriously. Then when it doesn't rain, the pitch is still flooded and you still have to train on it. Now you're in a relegation battle here. And I'm saying, seriously, this is you wanting to be a Premiership club. It's the standards are off the Richter scale. It's brutal. Mm-hmm. You're thinking, right, give me a room for analysis. In the social club, in the wee bar area, you're sitting on high stools. watching the TV on the wall, and you're thinking, this can't be right. It just can't be right. And you're saying, it's just not so detached from, like I came from Warrenpoint. Yes, I might have controlled what we had, but we had a 3G training facility. Mm-hmm. We had the social room upstairs for players only, for analysis. We had a treatment suite. We had an office. I hadn't got an office at Newry.
Okay.
There was no manager's office. I'm saying, so where do you talk to a player about contract? The vice chairman talks about contracts. Well, even that's being wrong, but where does he talk to them? Oh, it just sits in the stand. And you're thinking, I can't be serious here. Like, how do you have a conversation even about somebody's form? And you're saying, like, it's just not. Halfway don't have training gear, lack of training, just basic. Somebody needs to order me a crate of bottled water. Why? Because players won't drink water out of them water bottles, them things. And you're thinking, I wouldn't touch them, never mind put them in my mouth. So, and so it was always a fight, a challenge. That was nothing to do with actual football. That was just bare basic levels of professionalism.
Do you think that that's a club that's wanting you just to come in and just take over and do it all, because they're like, it sounds like a lazy mindset in terms of like trying to actually create a club?
I just say it's cheap.
Yeah.
And it's, I get people don't know, that's fine. No big deal. But you can't tell me people don't know you need warm-up gear, or you need training gear, or
very
you need
basics in terms of football.
Just tell me that, So, and they're the ones that I'm comfortable speaking publicly about. There's other pieces. We go into later challenges of where the board's challenged. There's a split in the board, and one's fighting against the other, and one's pro-Barry and one's not so pro-Barry because he wants somebody else to manage. And I'm thinking, I don't want this. What am I doing here? You get sick, you come back and you say, right, give it a go for a patch. You're thinking, you're down in the championship, you've lost all your players, your budget's less, you've done all that. Right, it's time to regroup and rebuild. From a football point of view, unless you're going to throw a bucket load of money at it and go straight back up and recruit the right Premiership players for Championship, you can't. There's no guarantee to go back up. Don't want to do that. So I'm saying, so you've got a 3-window cycle, at least a 3-window cycle. You get beaten a couple of games, and you've got people sitting on that committee. When come in, have a chat, and they're saying to me, we're in the bottom third of the table. And I'm saying, aye, what? Which is, there's 30 games to go. What are you worried about? I know, but we're in the bottom. I says, are you going to judge us now just purely on where we're sitting on the table? Have you watched the game? Are you done? And I'm thinking, it's just some people too old, too restrictive. The Newry way of doing things is the same way, the same people for generations. And you're saying, now, not them all, but I'm saying, there's no future in that. There's no progress in that. And I'm too rash, So the committee takes me in, they get a few answers about what's going on, and they leave with a list of questions from me. So you're saying, well,
that sums you up.
Let's be honest here. Like, call a spade a spade. If you're going to say that I'm not doing my job, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Imagine going into a relegation season and you're 10 games in and you're still waiting the finance director to confirm the playing budget for you. Like, in what business?
Right.
And you're saying...
So you started the season off.
I've signed and recruited the players that I had.
And you could be way
best
over.
I could on the littlest that I thought was appropriate. And you don't have budget, so you don't know what you're working towards. So you could be totally under, totally over, totally over. And then when you're in that committee meeting, because there's 5 games where results haven't gone well, and they're saying it's the most expensive squad we've ever had. I says, have we spent over budget? Yeah. I said, what is the budget? Well, I looked around the room as if to say, well, whatever we're paying now. I said, but that's not how budgets work.
Oh, yes.
Budgets, you set a budget, I spend,
yeah.
And then I'll spend 20% more, and you take the other 20% out that you hid because you know it's spend 20% more, and that's how the ball works. You don't let a manager just go. They're very lucky that they had a sensible one with me and I didn't go and spend.
As much as you wanted, yeah.
Now, they would still say I overspent, but the issue wasn't me overspending. The issue was that there was no guidance in terms of what you could spend. So that's not a manager problem, that's a club problem. I'm saying, but to a level of professionalism that is just alien to me from a business point of view, it's just not.
Do you think that with your understanding of business and being as successful as you are, that hinders everything that you do because you're like, I know way more than everything? Because let's be honest, boards aren't usually made up of businessmen who are out there making a lot of money. They're made up of people who have been brought into a job, they've been fans of the club and they've been brought up and they've been doing certain things, and now they're in a position where somebody's looking after tickets and somebody's looking after the club and somebody's looking after the shop and somebody's looking...
Yeah, I get that, and I get... But them people in clubs are very important.
But why should they be there then?
It's like we talked earlier. If I don't think that I can coach as good as you can,
yes,
I get you to join my team to do the coaching and I'll do the managing.
Yeah.
If that's why we have a physio. I can rub your leg, but I don't know what I'm rubbing or why I'm rubbing it. If you said, oh, that's sore, that's grand, but a physio will treat you. That's why we have physios.
Okay.
Imagine going to a board level and having a finance director that knows nothing about finance.
Yeah.
And I'm saying,
why are you here?
It's a disgrace.
Yeah, it is.
It's not, and you're saying it's not in good hands. It's just not, like, it's crazy. And that's nothing to do with my background. I would like to think any Joe Soap would say, here, do you want to be the finance director? I don't know nothing about finance, but I'll be a kip man, or I'll be something. I know that. Common sense. I don't understand why people want to be in them positions when they don't know what they're doing.
Is that just to say you're a board member, Newry?
Too many people, they're too long, in the same cycle. I've always done it. There's nobody else to do it. That's not actually true, because you don't ask anyone else to do it because you don't want to lose the power that you have. Mm-hmm. And it comes down to individuals wanting to be individual. Yeah. In the club setting.
That's probably their only thing that they want to be accountable for, where it's like, I'm actually at Newry every week and people know me now for being...
Look at good clubs, stable, sensible clubs. Who's the finance director at Larne? Who's the finance director at Linfield? People don't know them. No. But they do a really good job. Their clubs are settled.
I'm sure they have...
They're not standing in the tunnel every week and talking. They're not doing stuff like that. Yeah. And, they have some knowledge, at the very least, of financial...
their business or something.
Something or whatever. Or they're accountants, maybe a lot of time. They're bookkeepers, or they have that trade off the side, especially in clubs in this day and age. Imagine running a club financially with no actual financial input. It's absolute crazy. Crazy.
In terms of you being there then, was it very quickly able at that stage to say, I'm done, I'm out?
When I got sick, and obviously they were in a relegation battle and I got sick and I had no choice, I felt at that point that I hadn't fulfilled what I said I was going to go in and do for them, which was make a fist of it and fight the last day. I wasn't there to fight, I was lying in the hospital, and that's why, probably for me, I felt there was unfinished business, so that's why I'm back in the next season. Yeah. But that was a personal sort of motivation more than anything, and probably felt that I was fit enough to do it. Yeah. Looking back now,
you weren't?
No, not even next to near it. And I think the way Newry struggled with me as a manager because of my demands for a brief time, and even my demands when I was sick. And they're lucky I was sick, because when I look at what I demanded of them when I wasn't half the person that I should have been, they're so lucky they didn't get to fund me, because it would have been just crazy. But I wasn't, when Newry said to me, no, we're giving you the chance to step down, I said, just sack me. If that's what you want to do, just, and the dignity of doing that over the phone is brilliant too, as a club. It just goes to show their class. Yeah. Most clubs, if their manager had just fought cancer for the last year, guided you through a relegation battle, replaced me as manager on my back. I replaced me as manager for the last games that I couldn't be at with Gavin Dykes, who's a massively experienced manager at that level, at my cost, on my personal relationship, and then start again, even though you're not fit. Any logical club would have been asking real questions. Are you sure you're fit to return?
Yeah. They just wanted you in.
Just off you
hurry up, hurry up. Yeah.
So, that whole duty of care and understanding of action, that would have, looking back on that time, would annoy me now, looking back on that, because I'd say I had more support of Cliftonville at that time as a club than I had of Newry.
And you're actually honest. Yeah.
But that's not, I'm sitting here crying my eyes over it or whatever, but in general, it goes to show you the nature of the people part of it. And that's the bit that Newry aren't ready for a manager like me. They weren't. They thought they were, but they just weren't.
I don't think many clubs are
to be
really want to be ready for that, if I'm being honest.
So,
in terms of the diagnosis, what actually was it that you went through? Obviously you were diagnosed with cancer, but what type of cancer was it?
It was a throat and neck cancer.
Okay.
So it was
good to know that you'll still be able to scream.
Never stopped. It did stop me for a wee while.
Give the family a bit of peace and quiet in the house. It's probably the best thing about it.
Yeah. No, it didn't affect my voice box. That's for sure. We're in volume button.
In terms of going forward, obviously we've talked about it before. You were doing wee bits and pieces in the media very recently. You've kind of semi-retired yourself. You stepped away. You're seeing family a wee bit more. But any inkling of wanting to go back in, or are you at a point where you're content with being able to have spare time to do whatever you want?
I have more time now than ever. Obviously my work scenario has completely changed. Football has disappeared and I've rebalanced everything.
Ready to rack the balance?
Having the time to consider what you want has been important for me. Well, first of all, having the proper time to recover from what I've come through is important, and I feel like I'm at that stage now. So if I make a decision now, it's based on me feeling the way I should feel.
Yeah.
Football's in us, so there's always that temptation. I wouldn't say I'm 1,000,000% sure that I'm out, and I wouldn't say I'm 1,000,000% sure about going back in.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I'm more focused now, and I have spoke to clubs, and I've had conversations about various roles at different times over the last months, whatever. I think it would take a convincing properly for you to convince me now to take that job, and why and what's involved in it, because I think for too many times you've been shown what you want to see and the substance behind it actually isn't true. So I'm not as conscious as what I would been about levels anymore. You always would have said you want to play at the top level, you want to manage at the top level. I think as our Premiership evolves, roles inside football, equally as important as the manager's role, are going to open up and become more evident that they're required. That might be something that might interest me in the future. A management job may, if it was the right project with the right people in the right club and for the right reasons.
Would you need to have your own stamp on it too? Obviously you need to have your own stamp as a manager in any club, but in terms of what you'd be looking and everything that we've sort of talked about in terms of sort of like recruitment and all these things in places, is that now something that you'd be going to a board and saying, I would like to have this in place and this would help us in 3 years instead of us trying to get an instant one?
Well, I think the club needs to be telling me what they want, as in the club that is saying we want to have a recruitment officer, we want that.
So their values have to match yours.
See you as a part of that.
Okay.
If it's a project where they're saying we've got nothing, we want you to come in, give us an outline of what it might look like over the next 3, 4, 5 years, and we have the resource to work towards that. That's different, and that might be at a level that's completely different than what you've managed at in the past. But my big notion in football, and it still is today, we have missed the people part of it. It is definitely the higher you go. I'd always said people not players when you were at Warrenpoint, even with me. People never really understood with it. I don't think we should be treating players like players. They should be treated like people.
Human, yeah.
And that goes for the board members and the kip men and whatever that team is. It's just right across the board. I don't know, for a lot of clubs that's missed. They don't have time or no interest in the person part of you as a player or you as a person that's doing something for us as a club.
Yeah.
Where I'm particularly interested in that. And I think if I can get you as a person on board with me as a person and multiply that, I think that's where you start to have a good team. Obviously, you need to have a level of ability in football terms and whatever, but I think that's the piece. And I look at and I listen to, lots of managers and clubs at the minute in the Premiership talking about the full-time or the big money clubs and then low money clubs. And I'm saying, but what are you doing about it?
Yeah.
What, for me, the part of me doing would be the people side. And I just think it's undervalued, underrated, because I don't think people can write it down and put a value against it. It's not totally measurable all the time. It's one of them things. And it's like Liverpool, European night during the week, Madrid, and Madrid can't deal with the atmosphere at Anfield. What's that?
Yeah.
How do you value that? You can't. Now I know that's at a very different level, but that's the sort of level that I think that we need to be breaking down a wee bit more inside clubs, because clubs should be becoming more hubs, communities, more, and I don't mean community as in the white, but football community. It should be something that you have to come into and be part of. Not that the club is part of you. It's
you're coming to it.
The other way now. You come in and our ethos as a club is we're this. You have to come in and be part of this.
Yeah.
Not change it, be better. You have to fit what this is, not the other way around. Yeah, and I think that's, for me, I don't know if there's many clubs out there that have an appetite to actually take a project like that on.
Yeah. Interesting. I like it though. I like the idea of it. I like the idea of potentially seeing you in the Ballywin League. No, mate. No, I'm joking. But listen here, I'm going to cut it there because I don't think there's a better way to finish, and some of the guests end up finishing the pod itself, and I feel like you've did that, but it's been an absolute pleasure. What a conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, but we finish on hugs. You know I love hugs and always have, so
hug you yet. No, big pleasure. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh. Join us next week on the On The Spot Football Podcast for yet another fantastic guest. We'll be introducing them on the Sunday night, so please look out for socials. See you soon.